Ladies and gentlemen, today we explore a crucial question born from the recent and devastating confrontation between Iran and Israel. Strategic wins versus tactical losses. Who gained more? At first glance, victory seems simple to define. Who lost fewer troops? Who captured more ground? But modern warfare is no longer measured by body counts or bomb craters alone. True victory lies in lasting influence, regional power shifts, and the resilience of national strategy. Israel, with its unmatched technological edge and intelligence capabilities, executed rapid and precise tactical strikes. Key Iranian infrastructure and militia bases in Syria and Lebanon were severely damaged. On the surface, Israel held the tactical high ground. However, Iran's strategy was far deeper. It wasn't only about direct confrontation. Iran used proxies, asymmetric warfare, and soft power influence across Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Even after military losses, its ideological reach remains intact. If not strengthened, yet both sides suffered heavy costs. Civilian casualties, international condemnation, and economic strain plagued both nations. In this light, tactical wins become hollow if they ignite greater instability or long-term isolation. In the realm of modern warfare, the age-old assumption that winning battles equates to winning wars no longer holds true. Tactical success measured through destroyed enemy assets, battlefield dominance, or body counts is often short-lived and sometimes even misleading when viewed outside the broader context of strategy. A nation may succeed in a military operation, striking key targets and claiming immediate superiority. But if these actions do not contribute to long-term political stability, regional influence, or national security goals, then the victories risk becoming hollow. This distinction is particularly evident in the Iran-Israel conflict. Israel, known for its surgical military precision and advanced intelligence operations, may destroy missile stockpiles or neutralize high-value targets in a single campaign. Yet such victories do not guarantee the dismantling of Iran's regional influence, nor do they prevent Iran from regrouping or retaliating through indirect means. In fact, purely tactical gains can sometimes provoke broader escalations or lead to greater instability, which in turn plays into the hands of an opponent with a more patient strategic vision. On the other side, a country like Iran may absorb heavy losses on the battlefield but maintain or even expand its geopolitical footprint by shifting the conflict to other arenas, whether through diplomacy, information warfare, or proxy engagement. These non-military tools, though not immediately visible, are deeply strategic. They wear down an adversary's political will, isolate them internationally, or entrench long-term ideological influence across borders. In this light, the ability to outlast an opponent, to shape the terrain of future engagements, and to remain relevant in the regional balance of power carries more strategic weight than momentary battlefield dominance. The lesson here is sobering. Wars are no longer won by who fires the most missiles, but by who controls the tempo, the narrative, and the aftermath. Tactical wins may dazzle on the evening news, but strategic endurance determines the final outcome. Israel's tactical edge in the recent conflict was built upon decades of military modernization, technological innovation, and a deeply integrated intelligence apparatus. It is not just that Israel possesses advanced weapons, it is how they are used, with speed, precision, and near real-time coordination. In a matter of hours, Israeli forces were able to carry out multiple synchronized airstrikes deep into hostile territory, disabling radar systems, weapons depots, and command centers with a high degree of accuracy. These operations were often guided by actionable intelligence gathered through an intricate network of satellite surveillance, cyber operations, human intelligence assets, and real-time drone reconnaissance. The effectiveness of these strikes, showcased Israel's superiority in tactical warfare. Their ability to neutralize threats before they materialize, preemptively striking missile launch sites, for instance, speaks to a doctrine that prioritizes speed, prevention, and minimal exposure of its own force. Additionally, the Iron Dome and other missile defense systems played a crucial role in neutralizing incoming threats, reducing civilian casualties and infrastructure damage on the home front. This defensive layer, combined with overwhelming offensive capability, forms a dual-pronged tactical advantage rarely matched in the region. However, this tactical edge is not just limited to hardware or firepower. It also stems from Israel's operational doctrine, which emphasizes real-time data fusion, network-centric warfare, and adaptive battlefield management. Commanders on the ground are empowered with precise intelligence feeds and autonomous decision-making authority, enabling them to respond quickly to changing conditions without waiting for high-level directives. This fluidity and responsiveness create a military environment where tactical objectives can be achieved rapidly, often catching adversaries off guard. Moreover, Israel's integration of cyber warfare into conventional military operations is a critical force multiplier. Cyber units have been used to disable Iranian communications, misdirect enemy movements, or even temporarily blind surveillance systems prior to kinetic strikes. These cyber capabilities, when paired with traditional firepower, give Israel a modern, hybrid tactical edge that few nations can rival. From strategic Air Force deployments to covert special forces missions, every move is calibrated for maximum tactical gain with minimal risk. In the immediate sense, such capabilities allow Israel to deliver powerful short-term blows to enemy infrastructure and leadership. It sends a clear message of deterrence while maintaining a strong defense posture. But while these tactical wins may be decisive in the moment, they exist within a larger and far more complex strategic context. Iran's strategic depth in the recent conflict lies not in its ability to match Israel missile for missile or aircraft for aircraft, but in its unique and calculated approach to long-term influence through asymmetric warfare and proxy dynamics. Rather than engaging in direct conventional warfare where it is technologically outmatched, Iran has constructed a vast and layered network of allied non-state actors, paramilitary forces and ideological militias across the Middle East. Groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, various Shiite militias in Iraq, and the Syrian regime forces backed by Iran serve as force multipliers, extending Tehran's reach without exposing it to the direct costs of warfare on its own soil. This proxy structure allows Iran to absorb tactical defeats without jeopardizing its overall strategic goals. If one front weakens or suffers losses, others remain active, keeping Israel and its allies engaged on multiple fronts simultaneously. This decentralization of power, though chaotic, makes Iranian influence difficult to fully dismantle. It is not dependent on a single leader, base, or command center. Instead, its resilience lies in ideological alignment, logistical support, and a shared sense of anti-Israeli and anti-Western identity that unites its proxies under a broad but potent umbrella. In addition to physical force projection through proxies, Iran employs what could be called strategic patience. It understands that wars are not always won quickly or through overwhelming shows of strength. Instead, Iran plays the long game, gradually shifting the regional balance by embedding itself in the political, economic, and cultural frameworks of neighboring states. By supporting reconstruction efforts in war-torn areas, providing social services, and using media outlets and religious institutions, Iran deepens its footprint, not just on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of local populations. Cyber operations and information warfare also play a crucial role in Iran's strategic toolkit. Iranian cyber units have increasingly targeted Israeli infrastructure, businesses, and government systems in attempts to disrupt normal life and apply psychological pressure. These attacks are often not meant to destroy, but to signal capability, to sow unease, and to demonstrate that Iran's reach extends far beyond traditional military theaters. Coupled with coordinated propaganda campaigns through satellite channels, social media manipulation, and diplomatic outreach, Iran maintains a complex web of influence that cannot be measured in bombs dropped or buildings destroyed. What makes this strategic depth so formidable is its adaptability. Iran has built a model that can survive tactical setbacks and quickly regenerate influence. Leaders are replaced, weapons are replenished, and narratives are reshaped to suit evolving situations. Even after devastating airstrikes or assassinations of key commanders, Iran has repeatedly shown the ability to maintain cohesion within its regional network and to turn losses into symbolic victories through martyrdom and ideological reinforcement. In this sense, Iran's true power is not in winning every confrontation, but in always staying relevant, always present, and always ready to adapt its strategy as needed. Both sides, Israel and Iran, have endured significant costs in the course of this prolonged and escalating conflict, and these losses extend well beyond the battlefield. While public attention often focuses on destroyed infrastructure or military casualties, the deeper toll includes social unrest, economic destabilization, psychological trauma, and long-term reputational damage on the international stage. In conflicts of this magnitude, even a side perceived to be winning tactically may find itself bleeding internally in ways that statistics cannot fully capture. For Israel, the costs have been multidimensional. Despite its technological edge and successful preemptive strikes, Israeli civilians have spent days and nights in bomb shelters due to sustained rocket barrages from Hezbollah and other Iranian-backed groups. These attacks, though largely intercepted by defense systems like the Iron Dome, have inflicted psychological stress across the population and caused significant disruptions to daily life, education, and commerce. The financial burden of maintaining high-alert military readiness and activating reserve units also puts strain on the national budget. Moreover, recurring conflict contributes to political polarization within Israel, with differing opinions over the government's handling of the war, military engagement rules, and diplomatic response. Iran, while not directly suffering the same volume of aerial bombardment on its heartland, has paid heavily through the loss of regional assets, high-ranking commanders, and critical supply lines. Each Israeli airstrike on weapons convoys or militia hubs in Syria, Iraq, or Lebanon weakens Iran's logistical and military positioning. These losses can take months or even years to rebuild, particularly when targeted assassinations or cyber sabotage disrupt key elements of the Iranian military-industrial pipeline. Additionally, Iran faces deepening international isolation as a result of its role in the escalation. Its support for proxy militias, often labeled as terrorist organizations by Western nations, further erodes its diplomatic standing and subjects it to renewed or extended economic sanctions. Civilian populations in both countries and across the region have borne the brunt of these hostilities. In Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, and Iraq, where much of the proxy conflict plays out, thousands of innocents are caught in the crossfire, displaced from their homes, and subjected to deteriorating humanitarian conditions. This humanitarian fallout does not just create short-term crises, it breeds long-term resentment, radicalization, and instability that perpetuate the cycle of violence. The refugee flows and economic strain on host nations create ripple effects that destabilize neighboring countries and undermine regional development. Economically, both Iran and Israel face serious setbacks. Iran's already fragile economy, crippled by years of sanctions, continues to suffer as military spending and regional commitments drain resources from domestic priorities. Inflation, unemployment, and currency devaluation worsen with each escalation. Israel, on the other hand, though economically stronger, must still allocate billions to defense, reconstruction, and security operations. Foreign investment may be deterred, tourism suffers, and stock markets react negatively to conflict uncertainty. Beyond these material losses, both nations also suffer reputationally. International public opinion becomes increasingly polarized, with growing scrutiny over human rights violations, civilian casualties, and proportionality of response. This has long-term implications, not only for diplomatic relations, but also for cultural and academic exchanges, trade partnerships, and participation in multilateral forums. The longer the conflict persists, the more isolated each side becomes in the eyes of parts of the global community, particularly as war fatigue sets in and calls for peace intensify. Ultimately, these cumulative costs, whether visible in destroyed infrastructure, destabilized societies, or damaged reputations, cannot be dismissed as collateral damage. They shape the future behavior, leverage, and vulnerability of both Iran and Israel in the regional and global landscape. The war has not just inflicted pain in the present, it has planted seeds of consequence that will shape the trajectory of both nations for years to come. Proxy warfare has become one of Iran's most effective strategic tools, allowing it to exert influence and apply pressure on adversaries like Israel without engaging in direct full-scale confrontation. This method of conflict, fighting through non-state actors, ideological allies, and militant networks, has allowed Iran to shape the region in its favor, while keeping itself somewhat insulated from direct retaliation. These proxies, while often operating with local agendas, are ideologically and materially linked to Tehran, creating a multi-front challenge for Israel and its allies that is extremely difficult to contain or dismantle. Hezbollah in Lebanon stands as the most prominent example of Iran's proxy power, having evolved into a well-armed paramilitary force with tens of thousands of rockets pointed at Israeli cities. Beyond military capability, Hezbollah also wields political power in Lebanon, giving Iran a seat at the table in the Lebanese government. This dual military political role makes Hezbollah more than just a militant group. It's an instrument of Iranian regional policy, capable of influencing the direction of a neighboring state while remaining operationally independent. But Iran's influence doesn't stop there. In Iraq, Shiite militias like Kataib Hezbollah and Asaib al-Haq have carried out attacks on U.S. and Israeli-linked interests, often acting on guidance or support from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. In Syria, Iran has entrenched itself militarily by establishing bases and training camps under the cover of supporting the Assad regime. This allows Iran to operate close to Israel's borders and build a corridor of influence, stretching from Tehran to the Mediterranean. In Yemen, the Houthis have demonstrated Iran's reach by launching missile and drone attacks that threaten not just Israeli assets, but also international shipping and oil routes, a form of economic warfare that expands the battlefield to the global economy. What makes this proxy warfare especially advantageous for Iran is the degree of plausible deniability it provides. When militias strike Israeli territory or launch cyber attacks, Iran can deflect direct blame, complicating Israel's ability to justify retaliatory action under international law. This asymmetric setup keeps Israel entangled in a complex web of conflicts without a single target to decisively neutralize. For every strike Israel carries out, a new front seems to open, whether in southern Lebanon, the Golan Heights, or even the Red Sea. It's a game of whack-a-mole that favors a patient and diffuse opponent. At the same time, Iran's proxies serve a broader ideological purpose. By framing their resistance as part of a pan-Islamic or anti-Zionist struggle, Tehran ensures that its allies are not only militarily aligned, but also emotionally and culturally committed to the cause. This makes proxy groups less susceptible to fragmentation or bribery, and more willing to endure heavy losses in pursuit of long-term strategic goals. It also fosters grassroots support in various populations, where Iranian-backed groups are seen not as foreign proxies, but as defenders of national or religious honor. This layered use of proxy warfare extends Iran's influence well beyond what its conventional military might alone could achieve. It allows Iran to remain relevant in multiple regional conflicts simultaneously, undermining its adversaries' focus and resources. More importantly, it ensures that even if Iran suffers tactical losses, such as airstrikes on its own assets, it can continue the fight by proxy, maintaining a form of pressure that is difficult to suppress without wider regional escalation. Israel's military capabilities are highly visible, not only due to their effectiveness but also because of the global media landscape and the geopolitical spotlight consistently placed on the country. This visibility, while reinforcing Israel's image as a dominant force in the region, also comes with significant risks. Every airstrike, every defense operation, and every military decision is scrutinized in real time by allies, adversaries, and the international public. The burden of being a transparent and high-profile actor in a highly volatile region means that Israel must constantly balance military necessity with political optics and legal justification. Unlike Iran's shadow warfare, often conducted through proxies or covert channels, Israel's actions are typically carried out directly, with identifiable aircraft, uniformed soldiers, and often publicly declared intentions. This openness is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it deters adversaries and reassures domestic and international allies of Israel's capabilities and resolve. On the other hand, it makes Israel a constant target of global condemnation, especially when civilian casualties or infrastructure damage occur in densely populated areas like Gaza, southern Lebanon, or parts of Syria. The expectations placed on Israel by Western allies, particularly the United States and the European Union, further complicate its military operation. These partners often support Israel's right to self-defense, but simultaneously pressure it to minimize civilian harm, respect international humanitarian law, and avoid escalation. This tightrope walk forces Israeli defense planners to consider not just battlefield success, but also diplomatic fallout and media backlash. In an era where a single airstrike can dominate international headlines and provoke protests across continents, the cost of visibility is immense. Furthermore, visibility makes Israel vulnerable to coordinated information warfare and propaganda campaigns. Iran and its regional allies are quick to frame Israeli operations as acts of aggression or war crimes, regardless of the tactical rationale. These narratives spread rapidly across social media and pan-Arab news outlets, shaping public opinion and influencing the diplomatic posture of countries far removed from the actual conflict. Even in cases where Israel targets legitimate military threats, the global narrative can be turned against it with selective imagery, emotive language, and the portrayal of victims without context. This constant media exposure also fuels domestic divisions within Israel itself. Public debate over military campaigns, especially those that result in prolonged engagements or high civilian tolls, can polarize the electorate and erode confidence in political leadership. In democracies like Israel, where military actions are subject to intense parliamentary oversight and public scrutiny, the consequences of highly visible warfare include not just strategic calculations,